Hey, Josh, how are you?
Good, John. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the John Hallett podcast. Today, we're talking about legal degrees of assault. But man, I just listened to a really good Joe Rogan. I haven't even completed it, but talking about AI. Man, I love that stuff, and it can make meaningless things super fast for us at
Yeah.
Rocky Mountain Self Defense and Fitness, and some of the stuff we do. But man, it scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, I get scared all the time listening to what it's starting to do and wants to do and can do. So, yeah, it scares me.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying to myself, this podcast is over. This podcast is over. And like 2, 3 minutes later, Rogan goes, yeah, we can just wrap this up.
Mhm.
I was like, maybe I listened to a whole ton of Joe Rogan and can kind of hear him, but I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. So this guy say we're pretty much doomed. It's episode 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. Roman, and I can't pronounce his last name. Really interesting. I'm only 3/4 of the way through it, and man, that guy's smart. And some of the stuff they're throwing out there from, is this reality? Is it a
I know.
simulation? But the big thing is, like, he's like, we can't stop it. We're creating something we cannot stop, and we have no idea. And Rogan had him on because he goes, everybody else, I feel like they're lying to me, and they all have a vested interest in an AI company.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he's like, yeah, if somebody was going to pay me $100 million to be a AI safety officer for whatever company, I can't say I wouldn't take it, but I don't know how to keep us safe. And it's an interesting one. So some good stuff there. Listen to it at 1.2 speed, guys. It goes faster.
Yeah,
Listen
it
to our
does.
podcast, 1.2 speed. I'm slow.
Yeah, and then it sounds like we're talking fast, like blah, 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 blah. But it's worth it.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes it out. I think it's a little bit better, people are talking clearly on a podcast and not talking super fast. Then I think it's a quicker way to get through them, even though with my auditory learning disability, I need to listen to things twice just to get it to sink in there. And I'm usually doing some mundane task in there, and my mind wanders to defending something,
Oh,
amongst
goodness.
other things.
Yeah.
So legal degrees of assault, legal degrees of assault. We see that in our citizen defender class all the time. We can see that in MMA competition stuff you're allowed to do when somebody agrees to get in a ring, cage, floor, mat, doesn't matter. That's different than stuff happening out, in the parking lot at Starbucks.
Hmm. Yeah, and if you've never actually trained like degrees of assault, you have no idea what it is out there. I mean, everyone has words for it, but until you physically put your hands on somebody and you start doing it, you've got no clue how you'll respond to that or how to even use levels of fighting techniques in order to match what they're doing. It's such a scary world, especially the law side of it, because the law loves to define things, and if you go outside that definition, it changes the very things you did while you're out there. So it's scary, man. Like, that's why I train with you.
Yeah, that's why, I do the things I do to try to get better. And we're talking about that a bunch in Peaceful Warrior, just how you progress as a student, instructor. It's all a progression. It's all just trying to get a little bit better and a little bit better. But man, it takes reps, like we were saying yesterday, people suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect and thinking they're better than they are, not training, thinking they have an understanding. And sometimes in martial arts, people try to get too much, keep it simple, stupid,
Yeah.
I think that's a lot easier than having a gazillion techniques, but martial artists can go down rabbit holes and learning too many things.
Absolutely.
So keep it stupid and, getting better at something. You got to spend that time. So got to spend that time. Where is my slide? There it is.
You got rid of me.
Yeah, I got rid of you. I didn't mean to, Josh. I didn't.
It's okay. Leave me.
I
Less of
wouldn't
me
get
is
rid of
better.
you. I wouldn't get rid of you. So, we've have simple assault, assault with injury, assault with a deadly weapon, and aggravated assault. So we'll get you back up there. That's sort of the things we're going to be talking about. If you see me glance up, I am not looking away from Josh's face. I'm looking
I
at
don't
my
blame him.
screen because I can't read this on the other monitor. So,
So
simple assault, threatening or attempting to hurt someone or lightly hurting without serious injury. Example, yelling at someone and giving them, uh, pushing them during an argument.
Yeah, that's simple assault.
Well, you're not justified to go to your gun there.
No, and I mean
Dang.
it gets weird now because they start getting in your face and you want to get away. You have to match their level, right? And the moment you exceed it, things get real weird with the law.
Yeah. You push the limits. It's that one that happened, I think it was last summer in Texas, where the guy was like brandishing. I mean, I think he just had the gun in the backpack, but it turned into this thing where there's two guys, got him in the pool, and it looks like the kid's going to be drowned. I mean, if he had a blade on him, he started off as the bad guy, but now he's being overwhelmed and attacked by these two guys. I believe the gun was still in the backpack out. It's not like he had it on him in the pool, which the fight had ended up in the pool. That guy was justified to do more. He was in the wrong in the beginning, but then those guys stepped the bound, and that can happen, quite quickly. You put me in a blood choke and I can articulate that I think I'm going to go out and I don't know what you're going to do from there. I'm justified. It's, you might put me out, but my friend might be justified to do something to you, and I meant to say at the very beginning, right? We're not lawyers. We're just talking about these things. So this is, complicated stuff, even for lawyers. And, I guess essentially it's really not that complicated for those guys, but you got a jury, you got everything else, all these other factors that just play into everything we do when we're trying to protect ourselves.
Yeah, and the other piece about simple assault is, they define it as being like lightly hurt. It's a scuffle. It's nothing that, I don't think there's haymakers thrown and stuff like that. You're talking about kind of like pushing, shoving, scratching, and yelling. I mean, that's how I'm seeing. Of course, the law sees it a little bit different, but those are the things that, unless you've seen them, which of all the things people see, they see that one the most: the pushing, scratching, shoving, and yelling. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it gets oh, he pushed me. I thought it was going to be a punch. It all gets complicated, but it's nothing that's, it's lightly hurting you. It's like, well, I slapped you.
Yeah. And it didn't change your
That one
face, and
gets
it didn't
subjective.
change the
Like,
way.
man, that
Yeah.
rocked my world.
Yeah.
Or somebody just slaps you across the face, and like how that is perceived to people, even in the court,
Yeah.
especially in the court of law, because we all have different feelings and pain thresholds. So it can be tough, but somebody could be like, "It was just a slap, man. You didn't need to do this." So it's kind of tough versus going to assault with injury, which means actually hurting somebody, but not causing serious bodily injury. So, I punched you in the face that, could have cracked your jaw. I don't know. That might be even getting into a little bit more, the jaw's cracked, all tough, I gave somebody a black eye, or like, let's just say, I didn't break your jaw, maybe I gave you a bloody nose, maybe I cut you right in the cheekbone or something like that with a punch. That's, assault with injury. It's a misdemeanor or a felony. So, it gets, a little bit more where, or everything, right? Ups the ante of what you're justified to do. Assault
Yeah.
with a deadly weapon, that's a felony.
It has to be. I mean, it's a deadly weapon. I mean, you just don't go at someone with a knife or a baseball bat or anything that could potentially be deadly that's being swung at someone, right?
I mean,
I'd want them to be felonies.
I think our students struggle with that, even if I'm threatening to use the weapon, whatever it is, knife, gun, bat, to hurt someone, even if no injury happens, what are you justified to do?
I mean, it's assault with a deadly weapon. You've just you've just presented something to me that I might perceive as being life-threatening to me. And that's where things start getting really, really funky. Because now I've got to interpret you pulling a weapon without coming at me. What, am I going to give you the time to do that? I need to respond, and I need to respond quickly, especially if they pull the weapon, because we know that the time to them attacking you is short. I mean, you can barely respond to it. It's so fast sometimes. So, it's hard for the person who's being attacked by someone with a deadly weapon not to respond at the same level. You can't under respond, because then you die, and that's not great. I mean, it's not good for anybody. It just becomes so touchy, especially in your jurisdictions, right? I mean, it also comes down to how the police officer's interpreting at the time, plus the court and the jury. It's just, I don't know. That one's so tough. That one scares me, because they just pull the weapon and they don't do anything with it yet. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to kill me? So now I've got to stage myself,
I could just swing that baseball bat at you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to hit you. You could say you got away, but man, you're justified to go to that firearm there.
Yeah. I can at least pull it and tell you to stay back. But the moment I see that weapon come out, I see that's one of my biggest fears, is that I just go, right? And that's going to be an interesting court case.
Yeah.
I was lawyer money
the other day. I'm like, you're in this range, man. Time for talk is over. Somebody just slashed at you with a knife. The time for stay back, and anything like that, the time is over. We have a trick question for anybody paying attention to the podcast, as members at rmsdf.com, that we were discussing. Is it too hard of a question for them? It's a good one to maybe repeat on an upper level belt test. But, it's, I forget exactly the range we're asking, but I think, it's somewhere in the 6 to 9 foot range. I forget how the question's worded. And, what are your top 2 choices? And so many people are getting those wrong, because they're, going to say, stay back. I'm going to turn and run. You're so close to somebody, turning and running is, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but man, it's risky at that range, because they're really close. They're a step or 2 away from you. You're taking a turn and they're taking a burst in at the same time. That becomes a really big mistake, because you've lost the angle. You've turned yourself to the attacker. You're too close to run. It's time to go. Whether you're hand to hand, you've got to do something at that range. I mean, they've just threatened you with a deadly weapon. I'm justified to go to my firearm.
Yeah.
That's where so many times with you're like, hey, and you just shot me. I'm like, you had a knife out and you were like 6 feet away from me, man. 10. Like, I'm done. I'm not taking any chances with that. It's kind of the one that drives me crazy. I'm like, I just did see a guy walking down the street from a local store with his gun out, and maybe I was like, what is out on that guy's belt? But which one? Like, when you guys clean your nails with the gun, in season defender class with a knife, you're like cleaning your nails with a giant knife. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what you're doing there, but that's weird. Where are we? It's the whole context of, where am I? I'm just, am I at your farm sitting on your porch? And
there's a difference between pulling out a machete and cleaning your nails and pulling out a little knife that's for that. Because I don't use a knife to clean out my fingernails. I rarely know people that do. I know some that do, but I'm not going to pull out.
I wasn't a threat. I'm like, you seem like a weirdo to me.
Yeah, and you're cleaning
you seem like
your nails?
A complete weirdo. You're walking up to me. Cleaning your nails with a knife out. Yeah, I'm pretty much done right there.
Even if
I give it enough distance, certainly I'd like to move and, take an angle, get away from you. Absolutely. But man, if they're presented right in front of you, you could come around the, corner, or they're approaching you. They see you on the sidewalk and they're approaching you with that knife, cleaning your nails. That's freaking weird.
It is. Yeah.
I'm like, I've never had somebody do that to me. So I'd be totally skeptical. I'll get to the other side of the street given enough time. But, if I'm defending my family, I got people here, and here you are with a knife and you're acting weird.
Yeah.
Like, who does that?
Yeah. I mean, have you ever actually seen anybody clean their nails anywhere? Have you? I haven't.
Yeah, I saw there was some homeless person at one point sometime in the last 5 years.
But normal people, John. Normal people.
Know where it was? It was Steamboat at this whatever their rodeo, couple Fourth of Julys, and we're in the stands and we're like, is that woman cleaning her toe? What is she doing?
It's so
It
gross.
might have been a guy. I can't even remember that. My
It's hard to
recollection.
tell
I
these
didn't
days.
like. I was no. It wasn't one of those, Josh.
What? I just said it's hard to tell. I'm not going
Hard to
after
tell.
anybody.
But I was like, I couldn't. I had to like really move myself to see the person. But my wife and daughter, like, what is that person doing? Are they totally at this rodeo and they're cleaning their toenails? So I
I mean, it's
guess
low. It's not impossible, but it's a low
not
chance.
impossible. But they were sitting. They weren't approaching you like with a
Yeah,
knife. They were just weird. So. Um,
weirdos with knives. Don't
Tough
get me around them.
people, you got to put yourselves in that scenario. I was just telling a new person, like, oh, great. Your boyfriend, husband, has their concealed carry. But if they're not training, you're not training. And the range is just a percentage of your training. Like what we're doing and putting you in those scenarios so you stay as safe as you can and stay as legally justified as you can. We're just offering advice and talking through this stuff, remain silent, get a lawyer, all of those
Right.
things.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Learn to recognize the
Don't
difference
call
between
us.
a simple assault,
Uh,
and assault, with an aggravated assault with a weapon. And all, like you see those in the gym now before you got to figure it out standing in the line at a local grocery store.
yeah.
We're trained with us. That's why we do it. That's why John put all this together so we can actually see it.
Yeah.
Because we offer real self-defense.
Yep. And, we try to offer the best product out there. Um, I was actually, I had just as you walked away or this afternoon after Peaceful Warrior, I had this thought of we'll match the price of any legitimate gym in Castle Rock if you're price shopping. And then it gets into like, what's a legitimate gym?
Chimp. Yeah. Like you said, my cousin runs a gym out of his garage. He lets me come for $10 a month.
Yeah. I kind of went, are they paying rent in Castle Rock? And,
Yeah.
they've got a full-time business as, that's somebody legitimately trying to run a gym versus I teach, 2 days a week at the park type
The
of
local
thing.
guy. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
we've got
you get
we're
deals.
always like, come in and check it out. Aggravated assault.
No. What is that? Like,
Assault that causes serious physical injury, right? Or involves a weapon. This is the most serious thing. Someone's, stabbing you, breaking someone's bones, using a gun in the fight. This is aggravated assault. That's a felony.
Jeez.
I mean, somebody crushing your airway, right? Somebody's got you in a guillotine style choke. I mean, it's endless, right?
Yeah.
The things that can be happening that you can be considered an aggravated assault.
Yeah. Anything's a weapon. Heck, if you use your baby stroller too much as a weapon, that could be a weapon in an aggravated assault. If you were to start using that thing as a club or pieces of it, right? There's anything. You could pick a stick up off the ground, a rock off the ground.
Yeah.
And they're everywhere. That's the scary part is that if you've got enough know-how, everything's a weapon. Everything.
Yeah. I mean, your lawyer, their lawyer can spin a ton of things, but yeah, the guy was coming at me with a pen, stabbing me with that pen.
If anything, the John Wick movies told us that a pencil can kill anybody. So, I mean, it's a stick with a pointy end, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be assault with
super sharp.
That would be aggravated assault with a deadly weapon with a pencil. So let
Yeah.
that sink in. Everybody's got a weapon on them, whether they realize it or not. And it's how they use it. And then you got to figure out how to defend against that and answer back.
Yeah. It's always like kind of going back to the reasonable man standard and what would a reasonable person do giving your situation, this mic here. I mean, could be considered if I was smashing you, the base of it's heavy, how many strikes is it going to take to crack your skull or whatever it may be. And, you're going, I was justified to go to my knife there because I couldn't take any more blows from, this big hunk of metal. And, the examples go on and on and on.
So the ground could be a weapon too, couldn't it? Like if I was to
slamming your head into the pavement.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the weapon, right? I mean, yikes,
Yeah, I mean, I'm bashing your head into the bumper of a vehicle. Like, it's fixed, but man, if I were hitting you if I was strong enough to swing that bumper around, I mean, we're talking about I'm picturing like a real bumper, not these plastic, what's underneath the plastic in your vehicle for most parts these days, unless you've got some sort of off-road vehicle with
crumple
something
zones.
decent in the front.
But yeah,
So,
aggravated assault with a weapon.
yeah.
Learn to
So,
recognize it.
you know, keynotes for students: words plus threats plus action equals assault. Even just threatening to hurt someone can be considered assault. Self-defense is different. If you use force to protect yourself, it may be legal if it's reasonable and necessary. So, and the more serious the injury or weapon used, the higher the degree of assault is, the one way to think about it. Sometimes I'll use it in kids class. Like, well, if I hit you with a pillow, can you hit me with a rock?
And the answer is almost always yes.
Yeah, hit him with a rock. Well,
No, you can't.
no, that pillow is not going to really cause any injury. Yeah, I can whack you around, but that's back to the very beginning. You were just slapped. It's lightly hurting somebody is what most people are going to consider is what a pillow did. Now you smash me with a rock, most people are going to consider, well, geez, that could
That
scramble your
escalated quickly.
brains.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, we had a contact form. We've got a couple more in this series that we're getting through, but somebody wanted to talk about first aid. We will work on that podcast. And it's been a little bit since we've had somebody in the gym to do a stop the bleed course. It might be getting time to do one of those coming up in the fall, but there's never enough time in the day, of course. So, but get in there. You got to make time. You got to make priority, guys. It's a crazy world out there. Fight AI, fight the wacko. You never know. It's better to have it and not needed it than needed it and not had it, as they say. You got to get in. I'm always saying train more, suck less. That's I'm just trying to do more.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit adds up. It's those people that have the once a week membership. I'm like, man, if you can make 2 classes a week,
It'll
you
go
just
twice as
doubled it.
fast.
Who wouldn't want to double their revenue, double your
I
income,
know.
right?
Double your
But
training, double your
and at
fun.
least I always say, like, as long as you're consistent, that's going to add up. But man, the person that's doing 2 to year 1, of course they're going to progress more. And we see that people struggle with that. Our kids struggle with that because they're not attaining the rank. Like, wait a second, we're both white belts together, then we're yellow belts together, and then that kid's getting promoted. Well, they're here twice,
3
and you're
times a
here
week.
once.
Yeah.
So get in and train, but be consistent. You got to train. Otherwise, you need some WD-40. You need
Yeah.
to
And
get in there and do something and get reps, so you're better and safer. That's what we're all about at Rocky Mountain Self-Defense and Fitness. All right, let me look at what we're doing next, Josh, and we will wrap it up.
I'm excited.
But I do like the idea of first aid and medical.
Me too. I want to do
I might probably said this the last time about this episode, but we didn't have much time today. Visual and auditory reduction, and then we've got failure rates in martial arts, and then the last one so far, because I've been too busy, I'm sure I'll add to this series, but it'll be in the future, is what to do immediately after a self-defense incident is what we've got on our docket, and then we'll look at first aid medical.
Cool.
All right, guys, train more, suck less. Visit our stores. You can get our suck less gear and all our performance products, our protein. I love our BCAAs, but I do the BCAAs and our protein all the time. But there's multivitamins. I kind of rotate what I do, and you can buy a ton of stuff. Shop.rmsdf and shop.clearsky.training will help really support this podcast and share it with a friend. Greatly appreciate it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We will talk to you guys next time. Thanks, Josh. Show does not want to end.